Welcome to the Film Riot Podcast. I'm Ryan Conley, and today on the show we have Graham Powell, who is an amazing actor, a very good writer, and also a director himself. He's working on getting a feature film made, and we've worked together a bunch of times before, so I thought it'd be a great person to have on the show to talk about all of that. He was in my short film Ghost House. He was just in my most recent short film Ballistic, and like I said, he's working on getting his first feature film set up with him set to star, and he's one of the writers on the film, and it's very much an independent film that he's figuring out how to make all of this happen outside of the studio system. So we're going to get into all of that today and a lot more, but before we do, I want to thank our sponsor, Westcott, which Westcott is the industry-leading lighting manufacturer that specializes in lighting and light control for filmmakers around the world. They are the originators of the flexible LED system, the Ice Light 2, Scrim Gym, Cine, and the Fast Flags. Westcott continues to develop new products with the expectation of durability, portability, and high-end results. Of course, you can jump over to our website, filmriot.com/podcast, find the episode page for this episode, and get links to all of their stuff there. But now I'm going to shut up and jump right into it with Graham. Okay, so jumping right into it, I'm kind of curious about where we always start, where you got your start, where you realized you wanted to be an actor, and when you moved into, because now you're starting to produce, you write as well. So I'm just curious what the origin of all that was.
Sure. Well, I kind of knew really early on, but I wasn't really kind of open in talking about it because it's sort of a kind of a ridiculous thing to just say. I mean, when people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? If you say actor, they just are kind of like, okay, but what do you really want to be? Like, you know, yeah.
Enjoy accounting, bud.
Right. I want to, I want to breed unicorns or something like that.
That's way better. I don't know why I went to accounting. Unicorns makes a lot more sense, I guess.
Yeah. So I just watched a ton of movies when I was a kid, like a ton. I was home alone a lot, probably more than I should have been for as young as I was, but it's a different time. And
I actually didn't have parents. I grew up in the forest. I was raised by wolves.
Wolves that had an amazing movie collection. They were remarkably, audio visual, like literate, AV literate. So, still wolves though. Still wolves.
Yeah, still wolves. Just real tech savvy.
Yeah, exactly. The speakers this one wolf had were incredible. So anyway, yeah, and I remember one of the first movies I can ever remember watching. I'm a child of the 80s. One of the first movies I can ever remember watching was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I was, of course, blown away by it. And I watched it. You know how kids are. They watch it, hundreds of times in a row. But on the same day same week, I should say, that I watched that, my dad showed me The Empire Strikes Back also. And I noticed this guy that was in both of these things. And I was like, that's the guy, Harrison Ford. That's the guy from the other thing. He's like, oh yeah, well, it's not real. I mean, this isn't real. He's an actor. My dad sat me down and explained what an actor was. And that was like, I was like, you mean it's possible to get into one of these things? It's possible to kind of be a part of that?
I could whip someone?
Yeah. And he's like, well, yeah. And I could see, in hindsight, he was probably like, oh, dear God, please don't let my 4-year-old son, please don't let this be the beginning where he's like, now I want to be an actor. And he explained that it's a job. And I was like, oh, man, that's it. So anyway, that's really early and really kind of interesting. I was always interested in how movies were made and anything that was showing, behind the scenes stuff, doing school plays, stuff like that. In high school, always doing school plays, because that's kind of all there was for me in that, where I grew up. I didn't grow up in a major market. I grew up in Northern Virginia. So that's about what there was. And community theater, of course. And then I went off to college. Again, I kind of wasn't ready to sort of, admit to myself, this is really what I want to do and go full force at it. So I, had a traditional college major. I majored in economics, but in my spare time, I was always in the plays in college, stacking up all my elective courses with acting classes and stuff. And after about 2 years out, I was working a normal job. I was working in the mortgage business, actually, in Northern Virginia. And it was fine. I just knew that something was off. And I knew that I couldn't stop thinking about this thing that I wanted to do. So, I was living with my mom. I saved for a full year. And I said, I'm going to move to New York on this date. And I did. And so I, moved up there. I didn't have a job, didn't have a professional acting resume of any kind, no industry contacts of any kind. I had barely, I had gotten an apartment like a week before I moved. And I moved up there, and the money that it took me a year to save up was gone in about a month and a half. So
sounds about right.
Yeah. Welcome to New York, kid.
Yeah.
And
why'd you choose New York over LA?
So that's a great question. I was actually planning for LA for several months, and then it kind of switched because I visited both places, and I was much more familiar with New York. A little bit of my childhood was spent on Long Island. So I knew the area. I liked the area. I like the East Coast. New York as a city, I am a believer that, well, for me personally, I don't know if everyone's like this, but for me personally, I do kind of need to be happy and comfortable in the place that I'm living in order for me to be truly productive and do the work that I feel like I should be doing.
Sure.
Where you live is a big deal to me. It's a big deal. So it was during a time where everything was first starting to go digital. It was kind of in the process of that. Like headshots, my first headshots were on a film contact sheet, and I had to use the little, jeweler's loop thing where you look at the individual headshots with a microscope and decide which ones you want.
Which you couldn't get around feeling like a spy every time.
Right. And so, and auditions were just now starting to become more digitized. I guess, no, they'd been digitized for a little while, but it was still a very in-person business. Now, I would say, a lot of auditions are done self-tape. And it used to be that you couldn't really ask actors to do that because it's not like every last person had a good quality camera.
Right.
Yeah. That's just wasn't a thing.
Which now you just have an iPhone.
Right, exactly. So I think where you live in terms of the business is a little bit less important now than it once was. I have a good friend who works a tremendous amount, and he just commutes into New York from an outside area. But a lot of his stuff is self-tape. I know a lot of people that self-tape. So anyway, that's where I would say with that. With regard to choosing New York over LA, also, I really, really wanted to focus on the craft of acting. I knew I wasn't quite where I needed to be from a craft standpoint. I knew instinct-wise, I had really good instincts. I felt that. But I knew it probably wouldn't cut the mustard if I was going to try to make it in the big leagues, so to speak. I needed to kind of play and work in an area with people that looked at it the same way I do, which is, and this is not, I'm not saying that this isn't how it is in LA, but in LA, it's so much about the business from what I understand. And I don't want to, I really don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to LA as a market because I haven't spent nearly enough time out there to form an educated opinion. But what I did see when I did visit New York was it was very much an artist community, and you could very easily get in with other like-minded artists and like-minded people, and you could workshop a play, and it wasn't that was very easy to do, and you could shoot a little indie film project on the weekend, and that was easy to do. And there was just way more opportunity, not as much perhaps opportunities for the big ticket jobs that we all want, obviously, but there was a ton of opportunity to just work a lot and get a lot of stage time or a lot of on-set time all the time. And it's a really social town, I think, because it's, it's not a car culture. So you just feel surrounded by people more all the time. And I kind of like that. I like that buzz. I like the energy of the city. I like the food. I like that I don't have to drive. I like that it's the East Coast. I like that it's closer to my family. I like just the energy of it. It's just, it was kind of
So it's more of a personal reason than a business reason overall, it sounds like.
Totally. I mean, yeah, I think if it was straight up like business, like I want to be in film and TV and that's what I want and that's all there is to it, perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps LA would have been the right call. For me, it was kind of a more holistic approach. It was like, this is the kind of life I want.
Yeah.
And New York offers that.
Which is entirely rational.
Yeah. So
Good on you for keeping family in the loop.
Yeah. Why do I feel like I'm getting like the conciliatory pat on the back, like, hey, man, at least
Hey, man, I'm in Dallas, Texas, so there is zero judgment and just brotherhood coming from me. Yeah, I often wonder that even about myself. I mean, obviously, you're in New York. I mean, you got the two places, LA and New York. At least, you're in New York. I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
Which there's a decent film community here and everything. But the thing that's great about what we're doing now versus what you were doing then is, and you're kind of touching on that, is everything's so digitized and so small now thanks to just, the internet and, the devices we now have that, I mean, I'm working, every short film I do, maybe half the people are local, maybe. And when it comes to post-production, no one's local.
Yeah.
It's literally all around the world, not even just America. So, it's such an interesting thing now versus then, where everything's so much smaller. And, like we were talking about offline, I'm doing some stuff behind the scenes now, and I'm not in LA. And it has not been a problem so far. So it's very interesting. But for you, being an actor, you do physically have to be in the place at some point. I mean, as a director, I do physically also have to be in a place at some point.
Right.
So it's the same thing. Have you found a difference in opportunities from LA to New York? Like, I guess it's something that I'm curious about that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
Is there like a totally different market in the two places as far as the type of work you're going to get? Or is it pretty much the same thing on either side? Because everybody always says, oh, you got to go to either LA or New York.
Yeah.
And I know what's going on in LA. I've been there, but I don't know anything about the New York market because I've just never been there for it. So I'm just really curious about the differences between the two.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't know a ton about the LA market, but my understanding is that it's a lot bigger and you're kind of, there are a lot of opportunities on the, TV and film. I do think that there are opportunities also in New York for film and TV. There's a lot more now, much more so in the last 10 to 15 years. And to your point, everything is kind of a perfect example. Like, I know somebody who recently moved to Los Angeles. He's kind of splitting his time, and he is planning a permanent move there. And as he was back home to New York for basically a vacation, he got a call for 2 self-tape things for big things, but they were through New York. But they thought he was in LA, and he was in New York physically. And they gave him, 2 self-tape. He booked them both. So they're both New York-based casting offices. And part of that is because they knew him because he'd been in New York for so long. So I think you can carve out an existence for yourself anywhere. I really do.
Yeah.
As an actor, it is more important, I think, to be in a major market, or at least close to one. Those would be New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, probably. If theater is your thing, then Chicago's a good place too. But
where are your reps?
In New York. Yeah.
New York. I have one of the managers I'm talking to is in LA, and the other one is in New York.
Okay,
so
perfect.
It's a management team, but they're just split on either side. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably a great formula because, they're going to have different relationships, different levels of influence in terms of getting you the meetings that you need to be getting. And it's interesting what's happened in the last 10 years with, say, Atlanta. It used to be there was kind of this gold rush with Atlanta where it's like, oh, all this stuff is shooting down there, all this opportunity. And they didn't necessarily have as vast of a pool of actors down there. Good people, but just wasn't as many of them. And in the last several years, a lot of people have moved down there, crew too, production people as well, to the point where now it's basically where a lot of folks want to shoot, and want to work. So that's an option for folks that are deciding, where do I want to live? If they really want to live in a major market, which I definitely think there are benefits to it. I think there's also kind of a certain amount of legitimacy to it if people know that they can. It gives you a certain sense of legitimacy. A lot of this business is about perceptions. It's like how you're perceived.
Man, that is so true.
And so whether that's reality or not, it's how you're sort of branded and or how you've branded yourself.
Yeah.
So if they perceive you as somebody that they, well, are you free for coffee tomorrow? Can we meet at XYZ place? And you can't, then they're going to kind of, in their mind, they may still like you, but they may file you under not as serious.
Oh, man, I can't even tell you how many people have been like, hey, could we meet up for a drink or something? I'd love to, blah, blah, blah. Have a little general with you. And it's like, yeah, that'd be great. I'm in LA often. Oh, where are you based?
Right.
In Dallas. And then silence. It's like, okay.
They're like, is that a city or what is that?
I don't know. I don't know what this is. Dallas? Is it pronounced Dallas?
Dallas.
Where is this place? Yeah, it's just not having that convenience of, hey, I'm free today. Can you meet up?
Yeah.
Definitely has been a difficulty for me. And I've always known that eventually I'm going to have to possibly move to a place. I mean, who really knows? But, it's always been in my head and a part of my plans that eventually I might have to relocate. Because being local to all that would be very helpful for sure.
Right. But, I think that legitimacy we talked about can come from a variety of sources. And in your case, it obviously comes from all the things you've been doing for the last 15 years or so with Film Riot and the movies you've been making. So I don't necessarily think they're going to go, you're in Dallas. Well, you're not serious at all. And it's like,
Go away.
Take a look at the work, guy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's definitely helpful to have something to show for yourself, especially when you're going out there making it happen yourself.
Yeah, I think you're in a different situation than somebody who's starting out and deciding, hey, I really want to get serious about directing, and is at the beginning phases and they don't have a portfolio like you do. So I think that's kind of the great equalizer. I mean, the work is there. And I think ultimately it's like every little thing that you can put on your side of the scale to weigh it down is better. And I think being in a location where stuff is going on, and it's not just where the work is, but it's also networking events. It's going to the right, I don't know much about this stuff, but from what I understand, it's about going to the right functions. It's about going to the right, festivals. It's about going to the right parties. It's about, just kind of being around.
And I am terrible at that. I cannot, I suck at networking as far as go to an event. And I know so many people more people that do that than don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I can't do it. All I can do is head down and make more stuff and then hope that takes, you know what I mean? Because it's just not that I think that's anything wrong with it. I wish I was better at networking, but all the networking that I've been able to do has been a result of the work I put out. Yeah. Because I'm just terrible at being like, hey, how you doing, Ryan? You are? I usually just end up being like, okay, do you want us to talk about the movies that I like or should I just leave? Because if we're not talking about movies or filmmaking to some extent, I'm just like, I don't know what to talk about.
Sweating
you bring
profusely.
up sports ball and I gotta go.
Sports ball. Yeah, I mean, no, it definitely is awkward, especially starting out. It was awkward for me too, because it's so forced feeling.
Yeah. Well, some people, you seem to definitely have it. Some people are just good with everyone. Talk to a stranger like you've known them for years. I'm just not super great at that. If I know, if we go to NAB and I'm meeting people who dig film right, it's okay, there's a brotherhood there of some kind. There's a brotherhood, sisterhood, family ship happening there where it's okay, although we don't know each other, there's something there connecting us. Yeah. But you just, you go to any of those events and it's and all it takes is one producer type or thinks they're one that's a little snooty that'll throw me off my game completely and I just want to go home. I'm like, okay, I am 2 inches tall. I need to go. You know what I mean?
I do. I totally get it. And I mean, listen, honestly, with that stuff, it's important, but the work at the end of the day, I do firmly believe that the work is the most important thing. All the networking in the world is not going to score you a job in the absence of any real work that you've put in or actual proof of your skill. Yeah. I mean, I could network my ass off, but I'm still going to have to audition at the end of the day. The networking is to get me the shot. And sometimes it doesn't even do that because a lot of times at this stuff, everybody's kind of there for the same reason, especially when you get into producer and filmmaker meetup groups and stuff like that. Nobody has $1 million and goes to one of those things I'm going to pick who I'm going to give all this money to tonight at this thing.
I wish they would.
It just doesn't happen. I've checked.
I've asked, actually.
Yeah, I've asked. Yeah, it doesn't happen. So, we're all kind of there for the same reason. We're all looking to help get our thing made. Mm-hmm. And, I think so it does help and it kind of puts you out there. And I think it's, and like we said, it's about creating that perception about yourself, which is that you are a working professional in the industry. Again, with your stuff, I think your network has expanded in an alternative way, which is through through online and through social media. So it's probably 1,000,000 times stronger than most of the people that go to these things every week, honestly. I mean, I think you're fine. The fact that you don't want to go to a crappy bar where there's drink specials and, tater tots being served.
Well, tater tots is starting to sound better.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit enticing.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan, tater tots.
Come on.
Yeah.
But speaking of getting your film made, like you just mentioned, that is something that you're currently in the middle of, which is one of the big reasons I thought it would be really interesting to have a discussion. Yeah. So you have this film that you're working on now. Yeah. Do you want to say the title of it or do you not want to say the title of it?
Sure. It's called Shackled.
Okay. So Shackled. So you're working on Shackled. How long have you had the finished script?
I've had the finished script. I mean, basically we kind of pick at it from time to time where we'll do a table read or something and we'll realize, I'll realize I'm like, that's not really, that could be trimmed here. That could be.
Oh, well, when I say finished script, I mean it's complete. Right. I mean, you're never going to stop working on that thing till you're shooting.
Yeah. Great point. Probably about a year now.
Okay, nice. How long did it take you to write it? Because you're one of the writers on it, right?
Yeah, two of us wrote it together. It's me and a guy named Matt Bayer.
It took us about... Well, it took us... Actually, the first draft was written fairly quickly. And then for about a year and a half, we were working on it. And it evolved so much over the course of that year and a half that it's now kind of enough of a different movie that I would call it a new movie. And so I would say 2 years from sitting down and saying, hey, let's write something, to having that finished draft where it's like now people that were in positions to help us get it made were being allowed to read it.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, we started off, my writing partner and I started off just basically we were really inspired by things like The Twilight Zone and Black Mirror, stuff like that. And so we started writing little vignettes, sort of featurettes, I would say. The longest one was like 80 pages. Shackled was, I believe, the longest one. But we wrote 6 or 7 of these things and just kind of pounded them out and did them in that style of Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, where it wasn't, they were episodic in length, but they weren't open-ended. It was like, this is the end of the story. And they were all very dark sci-fi character studies, basically. And we started shopping that around, and the feedback we started seeing was like, well, you don't really have a show here. I mean, I see what you guys are going for, like a Black Mirror thing, but there's Black Mirror. Like, you're not gonna, you know, like, you gotta have something else, because they could just, if this was really, really, if somebody really wanted to bite, they could just buy one of these or like 2 of these and sell, and, you know, Black Mirror could make it, or a show like that could make it, but you don't have a show here. You have little vignettes. And so we said, okay, that's interesting. And it was, the idea was broached, why don't you just develop one of these into an actual feature? And we said, okay, let's do that. And Shackled was the one that we felt the strongest about in terms of it. Just, we both responded to it. As an actor, you know, I wanted to work on it. I wanted to be in it the most. And so we were off and running on that. And so we flushed it out a lot more. So now it's a much more fully formed feature. And, we started sending it around and building a team of people that we'd worked with over the years that I'd also worked with, you know, on other things. And we're basically in the fundraising stage right now. So we are about half. It's a SAG modified low budget, which for those that don't know, I believe is 700 and below, I believe. Somebody's going to, you know, in the comments section is going to be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's actually this. I haven't checked, because we're not going to say, you're trying to make it for about 500. And in the fundraising stage of that, and there's no magic bullet to achieve that at this level. I mean, you know, if there were, everybody would just do that. But I always say this, it's kind of a miracle that any truly independent film ever gets made. It sort of is. It's exceedingly difficult to get somebody to put faith in you. The script, though, is being very well received. We were able to attach an actor by the name of Armin Garrow, who people will know from Vinyl. He played Conrado Galasso in Vinyl, who was basically the villain in that show. You'd know him from The Departed. He was in American Hustle. He was in The Sopranos. He was in Brotherhood.
How did you end up making that happen?
So I know Armin. I made the first film that I made was a 20-minute crime thriller called Graduation, which I wrote and directed and acted in. I wasn't the lead in that. It was just, but I was in it, and I cast Armin in it. And I saw him at an audition, and I was trying to cast that role that he wound up playing in that film. And I was at an audition, and I saw him. He's a very gregarious, very jovial, he's got great energy. He's just one of those people you see across the room, and you're like, I'm sure that person's interesting. I just feel like that person would be interesting to talk to.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, wow, that's the guy. That is the guy that I'm trying to cast right now. And we were at different auditions, and I went into, it was a commercial audition. I went in, I said, okay, if he's still there when I come out, I'm going to pitch him this movie. I'm going to see if he can do it. I came out, he was gone. I was like, stupid, Graham, stupid. Smacking my forehead really hard in the waiting room and causing a scene. Yeah. And I went, all right, well, lesson learned. I'm going to go ahead and, next time I see somebody, I'm just going to say something. I go to the elevator bank, and he's waiting for the elevator. And I get in the elevator with him, and it's just the 2 of us in there. And I said, screw it. And I turned and I literally elevator pitched him my movie. I said, hey, I know this is weird. I'm sorry. But I saw you in the waiting room, and your look is sort of perfect for this thing that I'm casting. And, in the 30 seconds it took to go down the elevator, I pitched him the movie. And he said, that sounds really cool. You can go ahead and send me the script. I did. He read it immediately. And like 30 minutes later, he called back and said, I'd love to read for this. And so we did that film. It did really well in festivals. We won a bunch of awards at the Long Island International Film Expo. He won an award. personally. So yeah, we have a great friendship and a great working relationship. So sent him Shackled, and he liked it a lot. So he and I will be playing opposite each other in that once we get it going. But yeah.
That's awesome. So once you had the script and first you were going out as a series, and was it management that was sort of steering you of like, hey, you really need to focus in on one thing? Or was this one of the companies that you were actually pitching it to?
It was producers that we were pitching it to.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was where that feedback was coming from. But that said, there was one production company that then when we built Shackled out into becoming a feature, the production company, a great company, we had great meetings with them and they were very interested. They said they would be interested in working on it if we then converted it back into a series, but just Shackled into a series. So just the concept of that. But the issue there is that it's kind of like when you Shackled was sort of a closed loop story. It couldn't really be, I mean, I'm sure you can do anything you want to do, but it wasn't born that way. It wasn't born to be a series. It's kind of a closed-ended story, and I can't really get into the details as to why without giving sort of material plot points away. But it's kind of like everybody wants to do a TV show right now. Everybody.
Right.
And because that's...
Especially with Netflix.
Everybody's like, that would make a great TV show. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the go-to response of every time you turn in a feature script. It's like, have you thought about making this a show? You just know.
Oh, man. I've heard that like 10 times recently.
Yeah. And it's like...
I feel like there's a series version of this.
Exactly.
But there isn't.
They should just, to save everybody a lot of time, they should just make their outgoing like ringtone, like when you call. Like, have you thought about turning your script into a show? And that way, like, we know you've said it. Yeah. But no, I mean, and the other thing too is that it's not every script would make a good TV show. It just, sometimes it just wouldn't. And so I think it's just thrown around a lot. In some cases, it's absolutely true, but in some cases, it's just basically they're trying to get in while the getting's good. And I can understand that. It's a business, you know?
Yeah.
And it's easier to sell a show right now than it is to get a movie made. So I get it. But it's kind of like we put 2 years of our lives into... It's like if you build a car, right? You know, for 2 years, you're meticulously designing everything, making the aerodynamics perfect. You're the stitching on the steering wheel. You're getting perfect on the feel on your fingers, where the shift knob is placed, and like, you know, the wheelbase and everything, and the exhaust and the engine is so finely tuned. And somebody goes, man, that is a thing of beauty. Have you thought about turning it into a boat?
I bet you that'd make a great scooter.
Yeah. And you're like,
you don't need most of those parts.
It's like,
you only need 2 of those wheels.
Right, exactly. And you're just like, no, it's not a scooter, it's a car. That's
what you thought about making it a boat. Well, that makes way more sense. Get rid of the tires.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't go on land; it goes on water.
And what I love is when people go, "It wouldn't really take that much to rewrite this thing as a series," and you're like,
"God,
it would take a tremendous amount of work to rewrite this as a series,
like all the other episodes, for instance."
Right. Like an unbelievable amount, and that's why, like TV writers, I have massive respect for them. The work that goes into that is just like I can't even. They are such workhorses. But to just kind of flippantly say, oh yeah, you could just easily convert this. At least maybe someone can, but I couldn't. I mean, I'd have a very difficult time doing that.
There has been times where it was like, you know, fair enough. I was pitching an idea and they're like, this sounds like a series. And then I was immediately like, yeah, you're right. Because there was so much to it that I was like, and then the backstory behind this is this. And then also this is because of that. And there was just so many moving parts that it would really need to take that sort of episodic, several installments to really like fill in all the gaps of what this story was wanting to be. And it was like, all right, that's not a 2-hour film. That's going to be way too many ingredients in one stew. We need several courses here.
Yeah.
So there are times where it has been true, but it's like, I'm with you. It's like not everything is a series.
Yeah, no, not everything is a series. Like, and I mean, also it just kind of depends on. Look, I think if you're out there to write and create content and that's it, then I think you know, for people that aren't necessarily passionate about, I am making films, like that's what I'm doing. And they're just like, I want to be a writer. I want my work to get made. I think it would behoove those people to learn the craft, learn the art of television writing and packaging a TV show and pitching that, because that is where a lot of the action is. And you can really, really, you know, do really, really well right now. for me, it was, I wanted to make a movie. Like, I've always wanted to make movies. Movies are what I love. And I'm not knocking TV. It's just what I know best. It's what I know how to write better. And I guess maybe I felt a little bit intimidated, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I just felt that the piece itself didn't necessarily lend to it. Maybe I was being a little too precious about it. Maybe, in 2 years, I'll look back and be like, you know what, I could have done that, and here's how I could have done that. But at this point, I wasn't really, ready for it.
Yeah, you definitely got to chase what you're feeling for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, I think. But with pitching this around, I mean, I'm sure you put together a bunch of, a pitch doc and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Where did you learn to do all that? Because I've had to really learn the proper way to do that over the past 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a hard thing to navigate. At least I found it a little hard to figure out, is this the right way to, because, you don't want to come off it's like formatting a screenplay. You don't want to put the action line in the wrong place,
right.
Sort of a situation. You don't want to capitalize the wrong thing, because then whoever's reading it is like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But I mean, a good idea is a good idea. A good script is a good script, of course.
Right.
I've heard a ton of people say it, and it seems true that just because there's some formatting issues doesn't mean somebody's going to be like, well, it's a great story, but why the hell they capitalize the name twice? It's gone. Throw it away.
Exactly.
So,
and what's with this title, The Matrix? I mean, come on.
Garbage. Throw it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where did you really figure out how to hone that in and craft a solid pitch to be sending around?
This one, I've learned by doing on this one. I have to give credit to my producer, director, partner, Luke Spears, who's also working with us on this. He's from Columbia MFA, the MFA film program, the producing track. So I think there was some training involved in that program.
Okay.
I would hope so that there was. It's a long program, long, expensive program.
Apparently there was education of some kind. I don't know.
Yeah. So I got to give credit to him in terms of the content. We also did hire a graphic designer to make it look really nice. Somebody said,
nice.
Yeah, I would
That's
say
smart.
this. Yeah. I mean,
you're way smarter than me, actually.
Well, it matters because it's kind of it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. It's all about creating that perception. It's kind of the same thing with it's about you as an artist and also your film. You want people to look at the film and kind of start to sort of, they can already kind of see the poster in their mind, and they can already kind of get the tone of it and see what the opening credits are going to kind of look like and the color palette and everything. And that's really what your lookbook is about, or pitch book, I should say, is about. It is about giving the content. I think the do's and don'ts would be, you definitely want it to look and feel the way you're envisioning the movie looking and feeling. So that's where the graphic designer comes in. And we worked with her for several months, actually getting it just right, so that you're putting in reference images and you're also describing the way you intend to shoot it, your color scheme, the tonality of it, the pacing of it, drawing parallels, not necessarily to specific other films, although you could do that, but more or less like an era or a genre or a kind of film. I think the danger in comparing yourself to other specific films is you're comparing yourself to other films.
Yeah, totally.
Now, there is a way to do that. I think you could do that. And we did do that to a certain degree, but what you don't want to do is go, well, mine's a found footage film, and if you look at Paranormal Activity, that thing, they made it for 15,000, and they made 300 million. So you'd be stupid not to help me make.
So
this
clearly, this is going to make $300 million.
Right. I mean, there's so many problems with doing that. You don't want to put any kind of hardline numbers or anything like that. You don't want to. I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not the be all and end all guru on this stuff, but we didn't, and the reason why is because for a couple reasons. We felt, number one, we can't in good conscience actually say any of that stuff and feel like it's true.
Right.
So there was an ethical component there, but also, let's say for the sake of argument that somebody does say, okay, well, yeah, you sold me. I can see where your numbers here kind of make sense. So what you've now done is made a commitment to that person, kind of an implied commitment. And now anyone who that was the thing that sold them on your film might not be the kind of investor that you want, because they are going to, look, you want the kind of investor that's going to help you make the movie, but they might come with a baggage of, hey, what's going on with this? You promised me certain benchmarks and certain thresholds and stuff, and they're kind of going to be, with, I think understandably so, expecting that you deliver on all that.
Yeah.
Versus, I think the kind of investor that we're courting, and this is why it's taking so long, so take this with a huge grain of salt, is people that are just very passionate about the film as we are. They understand that it is a business where there's no guarantees that it may do very well. It may not, but it will be capably made. That is one thing we are promising. This will be very capably made, and it's going to look awesome. And here's the script. It's going to sound, it's going to be acted very well. It's just, do you have faith in the project? And that way, we're all kind of, there's a more familial aspect to it, and we're all sort of just, I realize this is very a Pollyanna way to kind of fundraise, but at the same time, I think if you make a deal with somebody who's only in it for the business side, that is what they're going to be, then they will only be in it for the business side, and they're not going to really, and they are entitled to make certain demands that you have to cater to. So you got to be understanding with that.
That might not be in the best interest for your story.
Correct. But you took their money, so you have to listen to
so
them.
you have to,
Yeah.
I'm totally with you there. I do use like references to other films, but not in the way that you're saying. It's more like, you go through the whole pitch, sort of giving the tone and the emotional arcs and, the emotional depth that you're wanting to hit and, and pockets that you're wanting to hit. And then toward the end, I'll throw in stuff, which I've learned this sort of technique from other places, but it'll be like, the family drama aspect, and you'll give a couple of movies to reference that hit. But it's like, one of them that's pitching, I'm also pitching a sci-fi. It's nothing like the movie that I'm referencing, but it has the element, you know what I mean? Where it's like, one's a horror, and I'm putting in like, Revolutionary Road as the type of family drama conflict that takes place within the story. So, and then it's, horror aspects, and then give a few. So it's like sort of referencing other things to dial in a tone to where you could start seeing like, oh, okay, I see where, all the ingredients together where you're going. But it's not like one movie. It's filmed. And I try to make sure, I'm pretty diligent to make sure that I'm not referencing a movie that's very similar to the one that you're pitching, you know what I mean? That's in the same lane. Yeah. That way, you're for me, it's like gathering a bunch of colors to make your ultimate color, instead of just going, well, I kind of want to make a blue, so here's another blue.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, we did name specific titles, but it was to build that composite idea of what the movie would be like. Like our film was very much an homage, the script anyway, is very much an homage to, 80s sci-fi thrillers. And
I'm listening. Go on.
So we put that
You had me at 80s sci-fi thriller.
Yeah, so we said, we put that in the pitch book. This is kind of the tone we're going for, a cinematic feel, but kind of that B-ish movie. So we said, in the vein of something like RoboCop or The Fly, or, in the vein of Fortress or Wedlock or whatever, like things that are just movies that look, very much have a niche, not a niche, but like it's not this is going to be for everyone and everybody. This is like for very specific fans that like this very specific thing. It's dark, it's gritty, it's disturbing at times, it's funny at times, and that's what we're going for. So we named those films in that context. It wasn't, there is a fine art to this stuff, to figuring out how am I going to name this film without having the person be like, oh, they're saying that their movie's RoboCop or like RoboCop. It's like, we're kind of saying that the darker tone of it, the darker satire, but then this edginess with the color palette of kind of a Blade Runner, but we're not effects heavy. We like that color palette, so
It's definitely a balancing act. It's definitely a tightrope walk, at least so far in my perspective and experience. I'm going to pause there so we can again thank our sponsor, Westcott, who, like I said before, is the leading lighting manufacturer that specializes in lighting and light control for filmmakers, and their latest flexible system that they've come out with, which is an RGB light that we did a whole review of on the show. So if you do go over to filmright.com/podcast, go to the episode page for this episode, you will find that video where I do a whole review of that light. For me, the light is game-changing in a lot of ways. We have a lot of RGB lights out there, sure, but this one, the way it's controlled, the app that you can use, and the fact that it just has magnets on the back of it. It's very thin. You can stick it pretty much anywhere. You can rig this thing in any possible way that you can come up with in your head, and that is invaluable for me and the way that I like to work and how fast I have to work and how often I don't have time to rig all kinds of crazy setups to get the light in the places that I want. And everything they have in the controller, I don't ever need to gel it. I can just jump to the preset on the controller and I have any gel that I would want right at my fingertips. It's really, really excellent. So jump over to the page and check that out. But now let's jump back into it with Graham. You've gathered some budget so far and you're headed toward an end goal. What's been kind of your strategy? Because I haven't I've done my short films, and I have to go out and find money for those short films, but
Yeah.
not to the level of what you're doing, obviously, or to the feature level and then beyond. And so I'm just kind of curious as to what's been your approach to secure that budget, what steps you've taken, what so far have you seen that has worked, what has definitely not worked.
I mean, at this level, it's basically a lot of just personal contacts. It's like what I said at the beginning. If there was a one sort of method that worked, then everybody would just do that. But basically,
Matt, my writing partner, brought in a
investor that has produced. My writing partner comes from the theater world, and he has an investor that's produced a bunch of his plays. And so he said, "Hey, now I'm working on a film. Would you be interested in that?" So that person is helping us in terms of putting in. He was giving us our first money in, and he also is actively helping to push the movie to his extended circle. So you kind of build a cadre of advocates for your film. And then our other producer, director that I mentioned earlier,
Luke Spears, he's brought in investors from, his circle.
I'm going to everybody that I've ever known that invested in something that I worked on as an actor. And I'm just kind of saying, hey, can I talk to you about what I'm working on? And it's not necessarily, it's again, that tightrope, right? You don't want to be overly solicitous. You don't want to say, give me your money. It's
now.
Yeah. You just go, give me your money.
Please.
No, yeah. Give me your money, please. Exactly. No, but you just, you talk to them as a human being. You say like, hey, look, what do you think about this? And I would just leave it open-ended. Just say, hey, what do you think of this script that I'm working on? I'm curious to get your thoughts. And a lot of times, if they are interested, they will start asking probing questions. They'll be like, okay, well, where are you with this? Oh, we're fundraising. Okay, well, how much are you looking to raise? So I don't think we've ever actually, I've never actually said the words to somebody, will you please invest in this? Or even something to that effect. It's more just, if somebody's interested, they will kind of come to you with, you've approached them sharing the work that you're involved in and saying, hey, you're in my professional circle. This is something that I'm working on. I respect your opinion, and I know you like to sometimes get involved in things. What do you think of this? From a fundraising standpoint, the things that have helped us, I think, that have helped get the conversation going, based on the script, we were offered a distribution deal, which was a big deal for a film of this level. So that really, going back to that, creating the perception, that really legitimized the script, I feel like.
How'd you come across that? How'd you make that one happen?
So one of my producing partners, they are the global distributor for another feature that he produced before this one. And so he went back to them with a couple of films that were on his personal slate, ours being one of them, and they liked it a lot. And they said, okay, yeah, we'd like to, we want to be the worldwide distributor for this, or U.S. distributor, worldwide sales agent. So yeah, that was, so again, it goes back to, I think it's so much of this, you hear the old adage, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. I think it's both. I think it's absolutely both. And when you build that, people want to be involved, people want to be working on something. And if you know and respect somebody and trust them, I think it can only benefit you from expanding your network and saying, okay, I have these people who have these networks over here and I have this over here. And, allowing them to kind of, to be involved. I'm kind of rambling now, but
No.
I feel like a lot of it is about, and the weird thing is these things that, all of these things that I've talked about, these connections, came about from starting out doing some free work as an actor, doing a student film for no money, doing a play for no money, very small, very humble. And the more people you work with along the way, they also are building their careers. So if you continue to stay in contact with them, you check back in with them 5 years later, well, now they've got relationships with distributors. And it's like, oh, well, we're friends and you want to be involved in this. We've worked together before. And that's how it goes. So it's really, really important, I think, to build an artist family, an artist and professional family for yourself, where people that you've known and worked with that always show up, for lack of a better term, they show up, they deliver, their work is good. You trust them. They're reliable. And always be that person. Always, you need to be that person too. You're just always the guy that's, or the person, I should say, that's able to deliver and show up and help people. I think be willing to do favors for people, be willing to help if you can, if it's not going to, be a detriment to you, and build that kind of personal capital, that human capital around you. Human capital goes a long way in terms of making as you well know, probably better than anybody, that human capital, people just liking you and liking your work, coming out and doing stuff. is worth its weight in gold. I mean,
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think it's really easy and people jump right to, like, hearing what you were saying about getting the producers and getting the sales agent and all that stuff. Like, oh, well, he knew a guy who blah, blah. Yeah, but how did you end up knowing that guy? It's because you put in the work to build that team around you that you could go to and be like, hey, what do you think? And that's been the exact same for me. You know, rewind 10 years, I didn't know a single soul, not one person in the film industry.
Right.
But, I just put in the work, and I kept putting in the work, and I kept putting my stuff out there. And so very slowly but surely, my team started building around me, especially even on the side of my production team, just the people that I work with in production and post-production. That was such a slow burn, just composer, and then, my post-sound guy, and then my cinematographer, and then, slowly building out these people, and then even beyond, like with what you're talking about. So just putting in the years and years of honest work, passionate work of just making your thing, working with other people, looking out for other people, and trying to help them achieve their goals as well. It does 100% build that personal capital like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the secret. There's no get rich quick scheme. The secret is you just put in the work, and you keep putting in the work.
That's it. And I mean, you hear stories about there are shortcuts where it literally is somebody just knew somebody. And that
for sure.
That happens. That totally happens.
Those are the lottery tickets. That exists, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, and you can't bank on that. And I would go back to the beginning of my story, which is that when I first arrived in New York, I did not know anybody that was of influence.
Yeah.
Or, I had friends that were actors that were doing it too, but they were in the same boat I was. And I had no professional resume at all. So, like, I'd never been given any professional work whatsoever. So you can build something from that. And, I totally agree. You just got to keep pounding away at it. In the beginning, I said yes to basically everything. Didn't matter, no pay. So I would, do a day job that didn't pay very much. And then at night I would be working on other stuff. And that went on for, years.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you start building the network. And some of it, you look back and you're like, I'm not sure what I got out of that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that paid any dividends at all. In fact, it might have.
It does an experience, though, because I think something that's really important is learning, discernment of these people. Knowing, okay, this person's poison. I need to not let them stick around, or this is a person that I definitely want in my corner and I'm going to be in theirs. So I think, over time, and there was definitely people in my life that I allowed to stick around way too long because I just hadn't built the experience of that discernment yet of like, okay, you're kind of poison to me professionally and creatively. You need to not be a part of,
Right.
And I think for me, that's been the hard part. Like, putting in the constant work, but knowing who to put it in with and who to move on from. That was definitely the hard part up front. But, with experience, just like anything else, you really start figuring that out. You could take that temperature pretty quickly after a while. Now it's like, one phone conversation, and within 20, 30 minutes, I'm like, all right, I got I got you.
Also, your time becomes so much more scarce as you go on. And so you're like, I don't know if in the beginning, you're just so jazzed that somebody wants to consider you for anything.
Yeah.
You're like, you're willing to look at me and talk to me about possibly doing the thing that I want to do.
You can see me?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not invisible.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. So, like from an actor's perspective, it's like just getting cast in anything. You're like, I got cast in something. Oh my God. And, I think a big mistake that I think some beginning actors make, is they say, well, I say that, but I did it too. And we just sat here and talked about how it teaches you discernment. So I think, okay, let me rephrase. Sort of a thing that you have to go through is doing a fair amount of those kinds of things where you do
it's kind of inevitable.
Yeah, it's sort of this rite of passage. But I think the mistake then would be that not learning how to say no when you should now you should start saying no.
Yeah.
And they kind of spend a little bit too long in that phase of building the discernment radar. And it's like, okay, you got to build that radar. We understand. And then, your time becomes so precious, especially as you get older. If you start doing other things with your life, you have a family, all things like that. I mean, every little bit of your time is so precious that you really got to be very discerning. I love that word, discernment. You got to be very discerning about what you do. So the power of no is kind of amazing once you learn how to use it effectively.
Yeah.
But that said, I still try to do as much. Like just recently, I mean, somebody was making a Star Wars fan film, right? I mean, no money. They're out in the woods near their house. They posted something online. I was like, well, I love Star Wars. Yeah, I mean,
Don't mind if I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no, I don't need to be paid. And like, I'll spend all day playing with lightsabers and stormtroopers and stuff. Like, that's awesome. It's like, that's fun. And I can, you have to have that internal calculus in your head where it's like, why am I doing this? There has to be a reason for it. And it could be something as simple as I love Star Wars and I want to have fun. And I don't care how this turns out. It's okay. Like, I'm having a good time. If I get one still frame of me having a lightsaber fight, it will all be worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons to do things, and I'm with you. It's like, time is becoming more and more scarce for me, especially, we have families, both have kids now, so it's it's finding that extra time is really difficult. But I still try to do things. Obviously, most of my career still is just doing things for the sake of passion and trying to build, but also doing things that pay it forward. I'm not very far in my career. I'm still figuring things out. I'm in transitional phases, but it's still
me too, by the way.
Constantly looking down the ladder and seeing whose hand behind you can grab at every level. Like, I'm always trying to keep that in mind, because there's been so many people that have been so gracious to look down the ladder and reach out for me.
Yeah,
that just keeping that. So sometimes that's why I do a project, is this will not benefit me in any way, but it's going to benefit them, and that's that's worth it.
Yeah.
So I would say the majority lean toward that, but that more than likely that stuff is going to end up being, it's still building your film family
and your body of work too. I think it's important to always be, whether you're a director or an actor, you always kind of keep that body of work growing and building and fresh, so that if you're an actor, your reel isn't just a bunch of stuff from 5 years ago. It's stuff from 5 years ago, from 3 years ago, from 2 months ago, and it's always being refreshed. Put up a YouTube channel where you're just uploading new clips all the time. And most of that stuff in the beginning, and even now for me, a lot of times, I mean, some great footage is from stuff that was free. It's stuff that somebody just was doing a scene or doing a student film. Or I do a lot of work for a company called ReelArc, ReeLarc, where they will write a scene, customize it for the actor that's coming in, and shoot it beautifully, and it sounds amazing, and it's shot beautifully, and it's edited well. And so it looks like a clip from whatever show that you said you want to, market to.
Yeah.
And I'll come in as, a lot of times I come in I work with them as an acting coach for their clients, but I also work with them as the actor that these people are acting opposite as well. And, it's amazing, because then I get this, the scene is mostly highlighting that other person, obviously, because they're the ones that are contracting this company, but it's great for me because I'm getting terrific, footage. And so the reel is always fresh. And so, always be doing it all the time. That's, I think, with stuff like this, it's like any trade or craft. You just got to be doing a lot of it. That's how you get good. You just have to do it all the time.
And that just can't be said enough. That's
oh my God.
More than anything else, that's the thing. Just always be creating, always.
Always. Figure out a way. If you're a director, if you're making movies, then, you should be probably writing pretty much every day and in the beginning, so that you have content that you can work on. The great news is now anybody can make a film, because if you've got an iPhone, you've got a movie studio right there.
Yeah, totally. You can even edit on that thing now.
Yeah, totally. And I strongly recommend to any actors that are either first starting out or kind of, in the beginning stages. And I still consider myself in the beginning stages, man. I honestly do. Like, I'm not that far removed from the stuff I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So
yeah, same here. That's I feel the same way.
So I think it's what's really helped me at least feel and create the perception in my own mind, and I think in others' minds, that I'm making good progress, is getting into content creation as an actor. Rather than waiting around and saying, I'm just going to audition and I'm going to try to go to the right networking events and just hope somebody takes pity on me and gives me an audition or gives me a job. Instead, write something, and shoot it. It'll help you learn the perspective, not only help you work as an actor, but help you learn the perspective of writers and directors and the pressures that they're under, so that when you're on set, you know that they have a million things that they're worried about, and it's not necessarily about you.
Yeah.
And you also, it'll make you a better on-camera actor too, I feel, in my personal opinion, because you understand how a scene is built, how a film scene is built, how it's edited, the more you sit on the other side of the camera, the more you can now ask intelligent questions, say, or even pitch ideas to the director that you're not hearing, and say, hey, I have an idea. What if you did it like this? And then when you cut to that other shot you were telling me about before, you can come in from over here and da-da-da-da. And it just elevates you, I think, in the mind of everyone you work with on a set. You know.
And it gives you forward momentum. So if like, you don't have anything happening at the moment, at least you're still trying to make things happen. And who knows, maybe it's something that someone sees as, oh, I really like them in this. And so you're putting the power into your hands to some extent. At
totally.
Least,
I mean, I think the thing that will drive you crazy faster than anything is that feeling of I don't have any control over my own destiny.
Yes.
That will drive you insane.
Now what feeling.
Yeah.
Which you're kind of going to have no matter what.
You will a little bit, but what can mitigate it a little bit is working on something of your own.
Yeah.
Shackled's taken up so much of my time for the past 2 years that I haven't really had time to think about the fact that the phone doesn't ring as often as I'd like it to. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I really am, because I'm like, oh, no, I'm really working on something. There's a team that's actually gelling around it. There's concrete steps happening.
Yeah, it's like as long as I'm creating to some extent, I'm happy. You know? If like features never happen, which it will, because I'll make it happen. I have no choice.
Yeah.
But if it never happened, for the sake of argument, and I just did Film Right Forever, where we're doing the little sketches and stuff, I'd be happy because I'm creating. So as long as I'm creating, I'm not going to be in a deep, dark depression.
I was going to ask you
That's
something.
probably not true. Like, I probably have to do features or I'm going to be in a deep, dark depression. I was trying to make a point, but I don't think I believe my own point.
For those who can't see Ryan, he has a huge bottle of Jack Daniels right now in his hand. And,
glub, 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 glub.
Well, I was going to ask you, to what extent do you think that just doing those, to use your words, little sketches on Film Right, I mean, I got to believe that from a craft standpoint, just built your skill set to the nth degree. I mean,
yeah, I've said it on the show a ton, that it's like learning to play the electric guitar by starting on the acoustic guitar first.
Right.
So once I went to the electric guitar, I was like, oh, wow, this is way easier.
Right.
Because, it's doing them that way. I mean, we've done some recently. In October, we did these 2 like little horror vignettes. And one of them was literally me and the 2 people in front of the camera, and that's it.
Right.
And the other one was me with Josh in front of the camera and Wayne helping me, and that was it. And there was really no lighting. There was no, we put zero money into it, and we shot both of them in like 3 hours.
Wow.
So doing it that way is really hard to make it worth it in the end. And it definitely always shows, like, it definitely has a lesser production value, of course, and all of those things. And the post is always like a day max, with those things. But doing it that way and so accelerated has taught me so much, to when, doing something like Ballistic with, we had 100 people on set in LA and stuff, like I'm always talking about. There were moments where I was able to utilize the things that I learned by doing things that way and doing them so quickly and having answers to problems so quickly, that solved a lot of issues that came up even on that scale. So, and then just when you have those collaborators as well, to where you're not doing everything, but you kind of understand what you need from every aspect because you do it all yourself. Yeah, it was my real film school. Like, for me, film school showed me where buttons were. Film Riot taught me how to engage an audience and tell a story. So yeah, it's just that's why I'm constantly preaching, do something and then do some more stuff and then do something else. Because the more you do, you're building that toolbox that you really do just utilize all of it, even if you don't think you're going to.
Yeah, and it's fun too. I mean, it's actually a lot of fun. I mean,
it keeps you sane. If you're creative, it totally keeps you sane.
Yeah, big time. I mean, the fact that you had such a conduit to your audience, you had such real-time feedback on everything, which a lot of directors don't have that unless they're following your model. Like, how did that influence your trajectory, do you think?
I think it's a double-edged sword. There's really good parts about it, and there's bad aspects about it, because you definitely do have people that are just haters. People who don't like what you make, and that's fine. but they don't see it as, your stuff is just not my taste. I don't like horror movies.
Right.
Instead of just, I don't like horror movies, moving on. This is not my thing. It's, you suck. All of these things sucked. How you did this was terrible. It was,
right.
And that stuff can be poison because then you start overthinking the things that make you and the things that you love. So you have to be really cautious about that. So that's been something that I've always been conscious of and it's a little difficult because you want to take feedback as well and learn and grow, but weeding through you can ignore this. That's not constructive too. Okay, that's constructive. They're totally right. So there's a lot of stuff that, even when you finish something and then you show it to someone for the first time, you see all its flaws. You're like, how did I not see that before? There's been a lot of that. Like, certainly how I handle audio, pacing, all of these things have been refined over time just by showing it to that audience and seeing the honest reaction. Not the reaction of, I want to sound smart and I want to say something here.
Yeah.
That sort of fingerprint reaction of, I know film.
Right.
But the honest reaction of experiencing something and then just, giving the feedback of what that something did for you, to you, and what you think did and didn't work. That's been great.
Yeah.
Because, there is, as much as it sucks that there's the anonymity of the internet of I'm hiding behind my keyboard.
Right.
It's great because you're also getting honesty. So if you can figure out and weed through the non-constructive to the constructive, it's really great. There has been times where I'll just not read or stop reading or just walk away from it because I am concerned. You know what I mean? Like, you even see it with some of like a Star Wars film or something. Like, I don't want the fans to, alter what the filmmakers, I want to know what the filmmaker's going to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, fans get so loud that you're like, I hope they're not listening.
Right.
I hope they just make their film, for better or worse. Just make your film, you know what I mean? With your voice. Don't be worried about, because then you're just trying to make everyone else's film. And I don't want that. The best films of all time is because it came from someone's perspective, someone's voice,
True.
Could you imagine Raiders of the Lost Ark, Hive Mind? You know what I mean? Like a group project of Raiders of, well, what do the fans want? Let's do that.
Yeah.
No, I want to know what film Spielberg wants to make.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I don't like it, I don't like it. But at least I got Spielberg's version or whoever's version of that film. And that's something I've become very aware of recently with a lot of the stuff that you see online and whatever with, some of this poison. What do they call it? Something fandom.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Just general trollery, right? I mean.
Yeah, really. But there's been a lot of poison around, certain avenues of filmmaking. So I've become aware of it because of that. And I've just been trying to make sure that none of that is altering my voice, but instead, just focusing on the stuff that just makes you better.
Yeah.
But I definitely think, because for a long time I didn't have any mentors, that just having that audience feedback is really what drove me to see what was wrong in my own work and get better. So it's really been invaluable. It's just difficult to sort of like compartmentalize the different types of comments you get.
Yeah, I definitely think there are people that kind of want to sound smart and they want to, they just want to, they love the sound of their own voice or love the sight of their own comments.
Totally.
And I think a couple things, it tells me they might not have made that many movies themselves, because if they did, they would, it might ratchet some of their vitriol, I guess, because nothing made me
usually
more
the creators know to start with like, here are the things I liked.
Right.
Okay, now here's all the things I didn't like.
Right.
And that could be a much longer list. That's totally fine. But you're always like, oh, okay, you make stuff.
Right. And they also kind of know what's involved. They know how difficult it is to make something good. And it's like, wow, okay. I get it. I've become so much more forgiving since I started, on the other side of the camera. I'm like, okay. But these things worked over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're all kind of in it together. I mean, it's good for all of us. The more people that are out there making good stuff, it's not so much a competition as like, because every time I fire up somebody's short film, I want it to be awesome. I'm like, come on, here we go.
Yeah.
And I'm rooting for it, So I think there's that. And I think like the best feedback I like, whether it's a script or a movie that I was behind the camera on or my acting work, is somebody who's not necessarily steeped in the field or in the industry or thinks that they are. It's just a total, because at the end of the day, we make it for audiences, right? And it's like, at the end of the day, did you dig it? Did you enjoy it? Was it entertaining? Maybe it didn't hit the themes or the messages that you necessarily wanted, but did you enjoy it? Would you watch it again? Were you thinking about it, maybe an hour later?
Would you share it?
Yeah, would you share it? Exactly. And at the end of the day, that's really the only criteria that matters to me, actually, is, were you invested? Did you care? Did you like it? Were you entertained? So, like, for example, my wife's feedback's amazing because she, doesn't presume to know everything about this stuff. And she's just like, well, I really like this because it felt this way, but I didn't really understand this. And so it's kind of, there's this innocence about it. It's honest.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's so pure and it's unpolluted by, because sometimes when you share your script with somebody who's a professional writer themselves or a professional reader themselves, they feel like they must justify their, like, it's like, okay, well, I have to say something. I have to say all this stuff.
And sometimes it's like, they're just trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
I have to guard myself from doing that to people because it's like, oh, well, they sent me the script. I don't just want to go, oh, nice.
Yeah.
I want to, add value. Like,
Right.
What could I tell them?
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to kind of make sure you're not just saying something to say something just to think you need to add value.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the best feedback. And I mean, I think that's why your path, the Film Riot path, it's such a broad audience that there's kind of this, it sort of democratized your feedback a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And that's good because I think it's very representative of how the public at large would receive, a Ryan Connolly feature.
Sure. Yeah, it's super interesting. It's funny. I usually say it in the comments, like every episode there's someone saying it sucked and someone saying it's the best episode ever. Every short film there's someone, and it's hilarious to see them on top of each other, literally one comment after the other, of someone being like, this is the worst short film I've ever sseen, and the next person being like, this is my favorite short film I've ever seen. And you're like, well, at least it's getting a reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
If people were just like, whatever, I'll forget about it in 2 seconds, that's when I would be like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and we talked about a lot of stuff that definitely hits close to home, so that's great. And I love the direction the conversation went, but I did want to talk to you about acting and working with a director as an actor, but I want to be respectful of your time as well, and we're already going over, so I'm gonna have to have you on again.
Please,
so we can talk
I'd love
about
that
side of things for sure.
Yeah, right on. Let's do it.
Sweet, man. All right, well, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, man, and talk soon.
So that's it for today. If you want to connect with Graham online, you can do that by going to filmriot.com/podcast. Find the episode page for this episode, and all of his links will be there for you. You can follow me online by going to twitter.com/Ryan_Connolly. And of course, if you dug this episode and all the other episodes that we've done, jump over to iTunes, leave a review, share with your friends. That stuff helps us out quite a bit. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.